I'll have to upload this after we do it, but it looks like we have the feature to just go live on YouTube. So I will play with that later when I have more, less pressure. How are you? I haven't seen you in ages, Ofer. Hi, Andrea. Of course, you don't need to respond. Oh, good. Hi. So to just kind of lay the groundwork, as this is our debut YouTube video, I just wanted to welcome everybody to Spirit Collective. Our intention for these videos is simply to openly discuss like different modalities that we incorporate in the healing work, or any type of information you find fascinating, and that you'd like to share with each other as well as the general public. Starting with, it's just really interesting, Ofer, that it's me and you, because you are always so magnificent at allowing me to just plop something into your lap and then just like you go with whatever it is. I love it. And I had to laugh because I don't know what we call this technique per se. It's like, it is a type of download. Hi, Kathleen. Hi, Annie. I just went through and welcomed everybody, so welcome again. And I was just starting off with letting everybody know that I don't know what this modality is, and you guys certainly can pick up and contribute what you might think it is. I have this gift of kind of getting like some universal overview for the week, and I'm learning to coalesce that knowing into a topic matter for discussion. But I also have this gift for having information kind of just download into my head. And I was telling Ofer that that Kathleen and Annie and Andrea already heard this. I was telling Ofer that he's so phenomenal at letting me kind of like what's the word I'm looking for? He lets me, like, he always goes to the ride. I go, check this out, this downloaded, what do you think this is? And he just blam takes off. So I would love to do a minute of that, because I just haven't seen you in a while, and so I miss you and I want to like catch up with you. So I will just download this into you and share with us what it evokes. So earlier this morning, as I was receiving confirmations, right after yours, I heard the words, the promised land. And so I'm like, oh, what's Ofer got to tell us about the promised land?
The promised land, huh? Yeah, I don't know that it's a geographical place. Yeah, but it certainly feels like not a destination either. So, you know, sometimes you think like the promised land is a place to arrive at, where, you know, whatever is your dream, it's gonna be there. For me, at least these days, the promised land is like the journey, is where, you know, wherever we go, because something happens to us and we're just called to go in a certain direction. That's what happens to me over the last several weeks, months. There are many things that are calling, and, you know, and I take the one that feels right. And at least for that week, 2 weeks stay, it's the promised land. So the promised land is not always the same place every day.
Okay, and so there's a clue right in there for me though. And can you tell us, like, where do you source whether it feels right?
I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it, that's for sure. I mean, I used to, but not anymore. What feels right is what feels expansive, really. So if the body, if the heart expands when I'm just feeling about a possibility, that's a great sign for me that it feels like this is something to try. If my head is thinking a lot about for, against, then self-doubt comes in, and sometimes it's actually in the way of making a decision or taking action that is actually good for us. So it's more like maybe a dance where you feel like you're dancing with the universe, and so you're feeling into it. If you're called to do something, then you're taking a step. And when you're taking a step, it's either, and then you feel about it. And if it's still expensive, then, the next step to take. But if it feels like it's contracting you in some way, then you do something else. So that's why I'm calling it a dance, because it's like you're doing something, then you get an answer, you get a response from the universe or from whatever, and then you adjust. So that for me, going back to the promised land, it's not a destination, but it's probably like the steps we're taking in this dance.
Yeah. So one of the things that was downloading a lot this week for me was kind of like almost a return to the beginning of energy centers, in terms of the subtle energies that we're always interacting with, our personal subtle energies, and maybe to talk a little bit about just a kind of overview of chakras as energy centers in and off the body. But even more acute, my attention was brought even more to a couple different flows that can take place with the energy centers. So I thought to myself, oh gosh, maybe first it would be beneficial to kind of just give an overview of what is an energy center. And so most people, I believe, who have been introduced to chakras know that there's 7 in body, and then starting at the root of the spine and ending at the crown, the top of the head. And then in that little piece of in body, which is very important to each of us as our subtle energy, then we have distinctive energy centers that regulate our physicality, and then we have energy centers that regulate our spirituality. And what I was brought attention back to is that sometimes when we have a disturbance in our fields, which connect to these energy centers, then we might actually run our centers in a certain sequence and do something that I like to call a bounce. So like, I'm not sure how much I've shared this information, but like if a person is in their physical energy centers, then that's the chakra 1, 2, or 3, and those govern the physical, the emotional, and the mental. And then if there's any kind of external energies or information coming in that disturbs their own signature energy, then what can happen is, as they start the sequencing of connecting their energy centers, which they're never disconnected, right? That if you're like very strong in your physical one, then you're inclined to run to your mental one, through your relator one, up into the communication and or the third eye, which a lot of people know. And then cycle back down into the root one. If you're inclined to be more attached to the emotional one, then oftentimes that runs emotional and then relator, which is heart, 4th chakra, up to the 6th, and then back down into the 2nd one. And if you're a strong 3rd, which is mentality or the mental field, oftentimes those folks it's a little bit unique to detect their expressions of love, because a very strong 3rd mental will project out the pattern of incoming information sorting and then envisioning, and they may or may not bring it back into the community, but they definitely will apply it to themselves. So I was just reminded, one, that we can through traumas or experiences through the front side of those energy centers, we can kind of stumble, or when I said bounce, like go from first to third, never take it up to envision, and never take it back into community. Or we could get stuck in the emotions and not relate our heart, and then in that way not make it back down to relating with each other. And so I was just brought back into that, and I was like, okay, there's a lot of yummy information in there that would take a class all by itself, that I didn't prepare for tonight. But this is what's been coming in this week was, it is an interesting topic when we're doing our own healing work, to kind of get to know our healing centers, and so that we can start to register aspects of ourselves and where we might be bouncing versus flowing. And then coming into the idea of flow with what you're talking about with the promised land, this is so beautiful to me, because you were saying, I check in. Essentially what you're saying is you're checking in with, how do I relate to this information? Does this match me? And is this good for me? And that's a state of love for your own well-being, which is very important in this world, is a state of love for self. And then in the flow, like you were saying with the dance, so we have the upper three with spiritual, we have the relator or the interconnector at the heart, and then we have the lower physical. And I see it in my mind's eye as being this like a knot, but made from a single strand, right? So what I'm really referring to is the energy of the toroidal flow, in that those upper spiritual ones connect, intertwine, and feed into the physical, and the physical ones connect, intertwine, and feed up into the spiritual. So I'd love to hear what you guys had to think about, like, so many practices out there all talk about this idea of ascension, and everyone thinks there's some place we're going, some higher place that we're going. But I want to hear, like, what your guys' understanding, because my understanding is exactly what you said, Ofer. It's that dance and expansion, right? That is the promised land or the ascension. It's like language is so interesting to me in its own way of making attention to, like, the bounce that I was talking about. So do you guys have, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'd love to hear what Kathleen's thoughts are, because I know it'll be good.
Direction is interesting, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole notion of direction, like what direction are we moving in? And expansion is fascinating, because expansion goes in all directions, so it doesn't really have any direction.
Yeah.
And I had a question for you, Ofer. So you say, when my heart's expanding, so immediately what I wanted to know, all right, you're all about the heart, right? So like when you are experiencing something or an opportunity is showing up, like, do you literally like just feel that heart getting bigger? I mean, I often will feel a chakra just go. Is that what you feel in your heart?
Not always. It's not always the heart. Actually, sometimes it's in the gut, where I feel the expansion. But it's interesting that you're asking, because it makes me think that another way to see the promised land is actually the heart, because it's like, because the gut might be like a sign on the way, it's like it's like showing maybe go this way or that way, but yeah, aren't we always looking to go in the end into the heart? That's really me. That's kind of Yeah, if I had to think of a destination, I think that's a beautiful destination to go into the heart because it's all there. It really is.
Mhm.
Well, that's where you hold the contract of the main idea of you agreeing to come here and be Ofer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah, I
that's
mean
like
you
without
go
your heart beating, you're not a human.
right.
Mhm. Yeah, and so speaking of that, what I find really interesting, very compelling to me, is how many folks in their seeking of those spiritual gifts within themselves, that for some reason they also equate it with not with shedding their humanity. And like we're right now in the world, we have like major identity crisis going on, right? And it's like, and the irony of that is that in their process of not wanting to be identified by any quality or trait, they're creating another whole nother identity to be called upon in order to describe themselves. And I get confused because um I don't have that same I don't know, aversion to my humanity. And it's like, what do you guys think about that, like in terms of people who are doing or seeking to heal themselves? Like, how do we bridge that gap on helping people understand that their physicality, their what do you want to call it, their vehicle, their vessel?
Well, Johnny Ann, my first response is potent, almost explosive. because because this training, I don't know for the rest of you, Johnny Ann knows this, I don't know, Ofer and Annie and Andrea, I don't know. I've gone through a training on recovery from domestic violence and sexual assault. So the whole premise of the training in becoming a volunteer and helping these people is understanding the story that got us there, which, you know, Spirit Collective works on the story. We all have a story. Maybe our story isn't just from this time, it's from other lifetimes. And this identity thing came up for me in a really rich way because I have a grasp now from the work that these people are doing for the queer community. I call it queer because I get tired of trying to remember all the letters in the LGBT. But the whole point is that, and it's really very beautiful when you embrace it, because these people are very much, I think they're more advanced characters than probably even I am, because they don't identify, they don't have an identity landing anywhere. And so, I mean, they do, but they don't. It's kind of like they're not grounded. So then I go back to Ofer's heart expansion, or Johnny Ann, you know, coming in. I'm trying to stop. I've been working a lot on feelings, like working. So part of healing is like letting the feelings come through. But if feelings just move through me and everything is a field, do I really have an identity? Because when you start doing your psychological studies and stuff, we get stuck in our narrative, our identity. I'm not my mind, I'm not my body, I'm not my story. Well, if I'm not any of those things, maybe we're outgrowing identity. I don't know. I'm just wondering. If we're going to be expansive and inclusive, maybe it's much less important how I identify myself, because if you think of health as flowing or glowing or, you know, expanding, we think of non-health as being stuck, like getting in this circuitous pattern that always brings me back to the same shithole that I've been trying to get rid of all along. So maybe I wonder if it just reflects that, Johnny Ann.
Yeah,
you know,
and
like
it's so,
just,
you know,
we
it's
don't
so funny.
need this anymore.
What's so funny is that when I look at myself, like when I actually just kind of close my eyes and I see, you know, me, you're gonna laugh because I see myself as a bubble. And it's like, and everybody you hear is just another bubble. And like we bump bubbles.
Have you ever seen like when two bubbles come together, like their sides get like flat? Like
Yeah,
when they
for that
connect.
mirror moment, right? And then they become this bigger bubble. Yeah. And
but while they're doing it, there's like this shift and rotation and they're spinning. And then the next thing you know, there are two bubbles is one bubble. Great metaphor for we have no identity.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah, identities. When you were talking about identity, and I'm thinking, each one of us has lots of identities. It feels like identity is some kind of a boundary. It's like a shape that you're creating around yourself to define not only who you are, but what you're not, who you're not. And yeah, so in some sense, it helps. It feels safe maybe because you already know how to operate within this kind of gone or whatever. But it also feels restrictive. It feels like then you're not free to really cross that boundary. It takes courage, and so I think part of the self-clearing work is actually to especially shedding identities that are not helpful. Maybe you can keep here and there identities if they're helpful, but and it's all transitional, and anything that we are is good at one time, and then we're ready to move on to something else. But identities in general, I think, when I was younger, I thought that this is everything. Now it's like, no, it would be nice to really let some of those go so that I can get to the next thing.
Yeah, relating.
Because isn't your identity is really a reference to your past?
Yeah.
And if you are not in the present moment, you're missing the eternal now. So I'm trying to disidentify with everything right now. Like I'm tired of just locating and when I think about meditation, you close your eyes, you go in. Well, once you go into that chamber, and then I always think about Horus over here with the big eye, the Egyptian eye, and then the goddess, the Egyptian goddess in this picture, Johnny N. It's like, okay, so if we go into the pyramids and we find that chamber, we go into that place where it's so squished and we're flattened, but then somehow in that restriction, then at some point you just reach a still point and pow, you go through a portal and you're in the next level. I'm trying to get out, like a lot of my identity has limited my ability to think creatively. And I was telling Johnny Ann earlier, I said, I am tired of referencing my old way of looking at things. That's why I'm shucking the identity thing. I don't have a past. I only have, like, right this moment. I don't have one. It's just, here's the shit right now. We're having it.
Yeah, the other thing that comes to mind about identities is like if you're talking about healing, how related are we to what we call our disease, our condition, our sickness?
I can't believe you're saying this.
Oh, this is beautiful.
I can't believe you're saying this. Okay, well, I guess tonight's just about the shit. So, all right, I have a very quick thing to say, and then I'll shut up and give someone else a turn to talk. So my sister and I've been working on, so like we've been around a lot of mental illness in our family, like basically that's our narrative. And so she's having this really hard time, and she had this, contentious relationship with my mom, and we've just been journeying, and it's really just kind of like exhausting. And then finally I just said to her, I go, Gretchen, we're all fucking crazy. We are. It's just a matter of how much and in what moment. She goes, I don't know what happened when you said that. She goes, but the whole thing was over. It was like, oh, okay. And instead of like fighting the fact that some, like in all this analysis and around, she just realized, yeah, I was being crazy. I'm just as crazy as anybody else I ever looked at that was crazy. And suddenly, whatever their problem is my problem. So once again, we don't have an identity. We're a tuning field. We tune in. This isn't working, so we tune out. Healing. And it was like instantaneous. She just got it. She stopped having all these symptoms, but now I'll be quiet.
Good luck. So yeah, last month was an intense month of massive shifts, as you were talking about, with a lot of energy moving, and like in my personal life, it reflected in illness, mysterious illness, actually, with my father coming down with an infection, and that was its title, infection with a capital I, right? And it's like he's on death's door, and we're like, okay, in the family, who's going to do what roles, et cetera. And, though it was an intense time, right? It was also, it was wonderful to witness this familial cohesion. Everything was set aside, and we were very much in the now and handling just what needed to be handled in the now. And, it was really kind of funny to me, because it was like going into it, it's like, oh, I have some reservations, but I look within, and I check in with who I am, and it's like I'm this person. I'm the person that would say, how can I be of service? How can I facilitate? How can I contribute to smoothing out the situation? Because the last thing anybody needs is a contention, right? So that's the first thing that I do, is like, okay, I got to check in with that promised land and go, how do I want to show up in my life? And then I was just amazed at all of the love, that was active and present. And then again, later on, in dealing with a person who actually did pass over at a very young age, and being in a position to support that spiritual message in a concrete way, to use my physical body to express on behalf of somebody who no longer has the physical body, and to share that the wishes and the desires that this person wanted for their loved ones, which was all inclusive, and that was his journey in life, was that the pain and the suffering of of all that are included in any types of trauma or sorrows, and unbearable level, really. But the heart of gold that he had was what led him, and he wanted that to be what was a catalyst for the rest of his family and friends to also go within to their heart of gold and remember that they too were the ones that suffered all this life, and one of the things that was really interesting that you guys were talking about when you started talking about identity was when it comes to the energy centers, what's really fascinating to me is that when we birth into the physical form, you're instantaneously externalized. It's like everything that you're doing, right, is watching mom, watching dad, listening to mom, listening to my brother, listening to the dog. My daughter's first words were fa, fa. And it was like, what is fa, fa? Dog bark. And it's just like we're externalized, and for some of us in that journey, we don't return, we don't turn around, we don't go in and look, like you were saying. It's directions. Expansion is directions, and expansion is multi-directional simultaneously. And it's like, wow, right?
When they say non-local.
Non-local. Yeah. and it's just, it's like all comes together. And yeah, we can talk about energy centers, you know, but I really want that to be like another day. But just in that general sense of discard that which isn't bringing out your best. Look within to find out what that best is, right? And keep that alignment, because when you operate in the physical world from that place, then the boundaries dissolve.
Yeah, the alignment is really important because a lot, you know, we know that disease usually indicates that there is something that is not in alignment, and it could be something in the body, but it could also be and usually is something spiritual or emotional that is not in alignment with your truth, and that creates all kinds of distortions that leads to all kinds of problems. So for me, this expansion is important because it's like opening, and when you open, because it shouldn't, you know, to get to heal, to realign, is really more about receiving than about working really hard. It's sort of opening yourself up to receive something that is already around you, that is already there. You know, it's a connection with, you know, you can call it connection with the divine, with the universe, but it's connection with your health that is already out there, kind of trying to come in. But when we're not open, we're not expansive, we're blocking it, we're closing ourselves down, and we don't let that in. And once that comes in, it's like light. Once that comes in, then, you know, the work is actually not going to be that hard.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and not only that, but have you found yourselves really hungry for the clearing? Like, it's like, bring it on. Yeah, okay, my dad's dying. All right, well, let's go over and then like clear out a bunch of crappy energy, you know, but do it in love.
But so, Johnny Ann, what I witnessed in you is, okay, your dad was sick and your daughter's first boyfriend crossed over. But what's really fascinating, your dad thought he was going to leave. He's not, as we chuckle about that. But how the healing wasn't just for him, it was for you.
Oh,
like how
thank you for shining.
You
yeah,
completely shifted. He's sick, you get better. He got better too, but you got massively better.
Right. And that's a whole nother interesting energetic clearing previously that took place that I really believe facilitated that whole opportunity to heal the heart. And what I want to express in this, you know, from call me different, if we're gonna, you know, identify me as something, right? Call me different in my perspective, because, you know, yeah, you can offer me condolences, you know, oh, hope everything's going away, and I'm like, yeah, it's all going perfectly. And then at the same time, I wept over the child. I wept over the loss of the child, because just you tend to identify with your own child when you witness that kind of experience. And the first thing, though, that the common denominator between me and these two experiences was the heart, was love. And in that space, it was like, wow, there are, and just to talk about, I was telling you guys, you know, I get these weekly, it's so funny, it feels like I go and check the news. I get these weekly downloads, you know, and then I just share them with you guys about what's going on in the world. And it's like, I should like figure out some kind of background that says like the 5 o'clock news. But but like in this bigger picture, in the spiraling out, or in the connection between the two bubbles, I'm not alone right now in witnessing so much transitional energy going on. I mean, we have witnessed a lot of passing over in droves. And what I wanted to share about that was so fascinating was, yeah, here was my dad. He was ready to sign off, like, just let me go. And then like mysterious illness and supposedly gave him this heart attack, right? And then he comes in and he's like full of love. And I mean, despite the fact that he's in PTSD, for his family, that it was just pure love, and his expression of it was like none before like this, right? And then when my young one who passed over, he also was the embodiment of love. And here he is on the other side, and all he is expressing is pure love. And so it was like, here we have two different spirits, right, in different states of being, but one needs to hang out in the physical world and do more work around the heart. And sorry, you don't get past go. Sorry, you're like, you might have considered this jail, right, on the Monopoly board, but guess what? You just got out, and now you got to roll the dice. So the other one was like, just the absolute, like, I came in and I did what I came to do out of pure love, and I'm doing the rest in this disembodied state. And like, it's perfect. Does that make sense? It's like both situations are totally perfect. And it brings me to the question, like, have you guys ever heard that if you have trauma in the physical world, that you need to be in the physical world to heal it? Have you guys ever heard that?
I've heard it from you.
Yeah, I just find that interesting, right? That like, because I think there's an element of love that has no conditions when you let go of this body. So does that, in the planes of light, does that like cause you to like not have an attachment, or does it?
In the realm of my mom crossing over and what little I really do know about her, my work with Gretchen, I believe, reaches her where she is now.
Yeah. So do you think, do we really need to be handling earth plane stuff on earth plane? Because like, that's really what came up with my dad was, well, yeah, you're not gonna get out of jail free, buddy.
Here's two weird things that came up that I wrote down. It's like, I'm going to be weird just like you guys, okay? Okay, so like, I'm really following the coronavirus, and have you guys seen an image of it? There's all kinds of images of
I've
what it
seen
looks
something
like.
that looks like a round thing, a circle.
And it's got like little horn, like little, bugles coming off of it.
Okay, so hence the corona.
Around that. Yeah, I want to know what the coronavirus, like what it's doing. It's kind of interesting because, it's just a little alien, right?
Right.
And it's come to roost here. And then the other thing that came through, this is also funny. It's not really funny because it's the truth. So I'm giving up my identity, my body and everything, but I'm a body worker, so I can't like throw it all away. So when you think about your sternocleidomastoids, right? Those are the reins on your head, like a horse reins. Like if this one shortens, you turn this way. If this one shortens, you turn this way. And somehow that's related to the coronavirus. I don't know how. So I'm just, yeah, Johnny Ann, that's the kind of shit you say. So I'm just going to throw stuff out there like that.
Okay, so that's super funny because what I love about working with you, Kathleen, is I do throw that stuff out and then you clean it all up for me.
I know. So now we've remember I said I want to be with people that don't agree with me or don't understand me so then I can become them. So now I'm you and I'm throwing it out to you and Ofer and Annie and Andrea to like, what's that all about? Or is that just me screwing around over here thinking of shit? It came in really strong.
No, what you reminded me of was I had an episode of Frozen Shoulder. I'm a body worker too. I had an episode of Frozen Shoulder obviously is going to be a major issue with what I do for a living, right?
Yeah.
And
you do it with your elbows. Even then, that doesn't work very well.
Oh, this one was intense. I'd never experienced a lockdown because there's antagonist, right? There's your pairing of your muscles. You have your synergists, your antagonists, et cetera, et cetera. Nope. I just get to lock everything up. And it's just like, there was no specific muscle group. It was everything. And I'm like, this just seems almost impossible. But as I sat with it, I had a knowing that this was a viral attack.
Oh.
And here's the deal, what you're talking about. So check this out. What I got from your information was this. As a viral attack in the system, viruses seek the vulnerable locations of the body. Okay? So here you're associating, like mine was in the bursa for the shoulder. And I knew it was vulnerable because I'd suffered a couple different injuries. And I knew from an MRI that I had some thickening on my rotator cuff muscles. So obviously my shoulder had been doing a heck of a lot of stability work in not an ideal combination, right? So but I realized, I'm like, the way that this feels, it feels like I came down with the flu and it just stuck in the shoulder. And I said, well, duh, of course, because I'm overworked. Here's the deal in the world, people. We need body workers because our bodies are overworked. And so in that moment of realizing that that's what it was, I started doing more energy work, right? Because movement was not happening. And it's like you keep hearing the PT, right? The PT is like, let's go through that. No, don't touch that. Don't put that arm in a different location. I've got it slung just right to not elicit more pain. So let it rest. And that's one of the things that we don't do often physically, right? Is we don't let ourselves rest. And rest is the way that our body recovers. So in that process, in what you're saying, to tie this back, I told you, universally, we're purging all kinds of systems of belief. Well, if we look at energy centers and we talk about the bouncing, we want to go cohesively. We want to register information in the physical body. We want to relate to it in the heart. We want to incorporate our spirit in order to find divine truth, which remind me, I had a little tidbit on that truth. What is your divine truth? There's a little tidbit on there. So, and then how do we convey this to another, this agreement or, this cohesion through our vibration of our voice, right? How many people have wounds around not feeling heard? So I look at this.
I don't know any.
Right? And so a virus is simply a being that is attempting to survive its environment. I kind of look at it like, whoa, you're like way out of your comfort zone, man. You're like this gets a little sci-fi, right? This virus is like in a whole nother constellation or a whole nother planetary system. This is not home. And like, I couldn't even imagine. I look at people with complete admiration who immigrate, right? Because it's like I was born and raised in California. The idea of me uprooting to a couple states away, that's terrifying. But like, they all still speak English there. You know what I mean? Like, they have some common denominators that I'm used to of growing up with as an American. But like the idea of going from like a whole nother country to another, what that takes to immigrate. So that's how I look at the virus, is like, whoa, are you sure this is where you want to be? Because it's like, does this place nourish you? Is this really the optimal location? But it's a communication, right?
Yeah, I worked with clients that had certain virus or bacteria, but that particular one was virus, where we ended up finding another place for the virus and offering the virus, like creating a freeway for the virus to actually have an easy way to to pus. You know, it's like passing through a portal to another place. You know, there are all kinds of, if you go on the internet, there are all kinds of conspiracy theory, by the way, about this particular virus that was invented or patented rather than coming from the outside space. But I don't know.
Right, lost beings. This coronavirus is a lost being trying to find its portal home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, and very adept at navigating its environment, right? For the same simple thing that we all seek, which is survival. Because when you think about it, if you want to get into an opinion on it, it's like you're actually kind of dumb, virus. You kill your host, right?
Not always.
Well, and that brings me to something else that's so fascinating. So yeah, we all have like a story, right? Because that's what we're doing, is we're weaving all these different components of our essence into these experiences. And some of them are traumatic, right? And some of them are super joyful, but they're all experiences. And what I wanted to say to that was like, so when you were talking earlier about like my truth, and here's the deal that's so fascinating to me is that when you're checking in with the truth, what's so beautiful is that your truth for you, it is divine, and it also has components of it that are universal as well, that apply to others. But like there's so much space for each of us to be able to hold in our truth and intertwine our bubbles. And it's like, yeah. So, because I know that sometimes when I hear that, I'm like, okay, but like, what if your truth is that you are disinclined to see humanity as needing to survive, and so everybody you meet, you axe off? It's just like, okay, so yes. So Kathleen, clean it up for me.
Well, I'm just I'm stuck in a little mind wave over here. I'm thinking, all of a sudden I thought, okay, so something about like all these things are related. We just don't know how they're related. So the coronavirus is happening, the acquittal of Trump, like everyone's kind of like feels disheveled and unsafe. But then when I was listening to you talk about the access of truth, I go, maybe everyone, if we've given up gender as a way of identifying ourselves, maybe what's really happening in 2020 now, and that's why people can become quite dark, just possibly, I'm asking my team here, maybe what's happening is that third dimension duality is falling away. Like we've brought it up, we've brought conflict, we've brought lying, cheating, and faking to such a level that it's like, you know what, man, I'm just going to take my little red wagon and go home. I'm not playing like this anymore. And I'm wondering if that's not just happening everywhere. Like, because you talk about truth, and I'm just thinking, I think people are just like, no, not doing it.
So here's something. I mean, I'm not
doing deception. I'm not doing conflict. I'm not doing fighting. I'm not even playing.
So
this
let me get
not part of it.
So here's something that really supports what you're saying. It's a little political, which is atypical for me because I'm really not. But it's really more just information that I found interesting. So because we each live in a state, right? And we kind of know what our state, for the majority of our states, kind of belief systems, behaviors, whatever you want to call it.
Character. Each state has a
character. So everybody knows in the world that California has like this really big character, okay? But everybody in the world, including myself, who lives here, witnessed like the Democratic Party kind of overtake in this sense of like, we have to take care of everybody. And there's like no discussion on, well, how exactly are we going to do that? And then like, oh, well, we'll just, everybody's got to carry their load. Okay, what exactly does that look like? And so, there's all this evasion, right? Well, what it looks like now, ironically, is Obamacare had a penalty on your taxes if you weren't registered for insurance that either expired or was eliminated. I can't recall the details.
It was eliminated. It was
eliminated.
Okay,
so the state of California has decided that they're going to penalize their citizens if they don't have insurance. So now you know how that's going to be paid for. Okay? Is that really beneficial to the community? You just basically jacked up my cost of living even further? Okay, so, and I'm not being political. I just wanted to let you know that some interesting data has emerged, and that was that in the state of California, we are not completely a blue state. What we are is the other folks that don't quite hold true with the truths of our major cities. We are quiet. And that is what I'm seeing shift, is people are coming out and they're speaking more to their truths.
There you go. There's the SCM.
So there you go. And that is a potential threat, right? Like a virus. That's a potential threat to the system as we are operating it here in this state. What do you think about that?
I think, so now let's bring expansion back in.
Yeah, for me, a lot of this is, like Flynn, you were talking about duality. A lot of it is about the duality going into such an extreme state where some big change is going to happen because it's not sustainable anymore. It's like constant deterioration of everything in life as we know it, right? I mean, it's chaos. Mm-hmm. And it becomes more and more chaotic, and eventually something big is going to shift. And so it's really a process of some kind of waking up. However you want to look at it, it's like everybody was well behaved for so long, and now suddenly the rules are changing. It almost feels like there are no rules anymore, and you just gotta really open your eyes and see what is the truth for you, because there is nobody to tell you anymore.
Right.
Nobody is around to tell you.
So that is an expansion, and that's a personal responsibility. And there's a sense of groundlessness. Like, we aren't grounded anymore. We are not attached to the ground. And so once again, in my own discomfort, I'm just trying to allow it. It's like, okay, no groundedness. All right, so what's that mean? What's that mean for me in this moment right now? I'm feeling this way. Mm-hmm. Or, I told you things are always changing.
So if I can convey something significant in this process, and that is that as we speak to, individual heart-based truth, I think one of the biggest messages when you look at the two deaths, for example, the two samples of heart, one with shedding the body, one with keeping the body, that fundamentally, I think what needs to be spoken to as a universal truth is that every action and behavior and experience that you are going through, so are the rest of us. And so in your pursuit of healing or health, it's imperative to mind your spirit, because as we bump bubbles and converge together, you are me and I am you. And I'm not inclined to traumatize my spirit that way, in the sense of creating harm. In chaos, there's the irony of chaos is it's basically a maelstrom of form, right? It just hasn't cohered.
Did you know that in chaos theory there's actually all kinds of structure?
Yeah.
Did you know that, Ofer? Like in chaos, like when something's really chaotic, so remember when Cindy talked about your point of view? If you telescope out and get above it, if you could look at the whole structure, when you're like looking at a small part of it, it's like, God, this is a flipping mess over here. But if you get back of it and you can take a really wide view, it's really not chaotic. It is and it isn't.
Yeah, it makes sense what you're saying, because to me, it's actually fairly simple. I mean, the more chaos I feel around me these days, the more it's almost like the more simple it gets in some ways, because it's always the same. It's always there's all this stuff that is going on that you can try to get into the details, but do you really need to know all the details, or how important all these details of what's going on and what's causing what, and all this, it's all coming from the brain. It's all coming from the duality of the brain, smart ways to deal with reality, where these are probably not the true tools for to work with for us to wake up really anymore.
The true tools, right.
Yeah, I mean, it for me, it's just it just ends up with bring the light from above, light it up. It's like a flashlight, or a projector. Just light this stuff up and see how all this confusion wants to be gone, wants to disappear.
Okay, so check this out. As we were talking about, externalization, internalization. So as a body worker, we have, and as a nurse, and then a person who has suffered dis-ease in the body, and Andrea having been a recipient of body work. Okay, so here's the amazingness is, as above, so below, as without, so within. Chaos within the system is our fascia. And in that fascia, all those layers of skin, it's sacred geometry. There is form. And so isn't it amazing to think in terms of externalization and internalization, I am you and you are me. We individuate because we have these forms, but these forms, these vehicles, they're created by us in order to navigate the physical world, right? The third dimension. And so by the very nature of us choosing to come into a physical space, we are embracing that duality that you were talking about, right? The up and the down, the in and the out. It's just nature. And that, earlier on, you were talking about that. I was thinking, yeah, look at when you watch nature. I love to watch Nat Geo, right? And because they do the time lapse, we were watching Yosemite National Park yesterday, right? And you're just watching the seasonal time lapse. Pardon me, if you take a little minute to go out in nature, you realize there's just no judgment. You just do what you got to do to get through that season, right? And every season has its glory and every season has its hardness, but it continues, and you find yourself shifting through that light, right? Shifting. That's all it is a shift of light. And so I'm just in awe of thinking about like the chaos of our world, and everybody's going, oh, well, it's like, take care of your form.
It's too much thinking.
Yeah.
it's too much thinking.
Also precedes reorganization. That's also a scientific, formula. When I remember watching my children develop, which was really just a God-given pleasure, like learning what I had learned about them, but watching them, and they'd get really, really frustrated right at the end of a developmental period before something else would burst through, and their language would get clearer. They would master crawling or pulling up to stand or reading or music or whatever. At first, depending on the personality and how much resistance they were putting up, but but chaos precedes reorganization. So we're in a massive reorganization.
Right.
And the quest is, how do we care for ourselves in the chaotic period?
Yes. Yeah. Showing up like this, right?
Mm-hmm. And
Clearing
having
out there.
people tell you it's okay, and we don't change our path just because there's a massive storm going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. At least not in these day and ages, because we have all the convenience features of manifesting, right? Comfort stuff like Wickaway.
Hey man, I like my bed. Just leave that alone. It's a very nice bed. And when I'm away from home, I freaking miss it.
And
One night I couldn't sleep in it because sometimes in the winter, there's this like vibrational energy that comes through the ground that just like vibrates in my bedroom, and I can't sleep because, I attune to vibration. I'm like a lizard, I guess, I feel all the vibration. I had to go sleep in my son's bed. I'm like, geez, you're noisy. And then like it stops, and I'm always asking, what the hell is that? I always have my conspiracy theories about someone's doing some, little, CIA, or let's just say alien research underground. Maybe it's someone trying to reach me. But sometimes, now we're not having it tonight, but so many times when I meet with you guys, I pick up on and you guys hear it too, but I've heard it for a long, long time. And Tanya called him Freddie. When he comes to the group, we'll call him Freddie. When he comes to me, I call him Dougie. It's the same character with the wings, I'm like, Dougie, Freddie. They're like, he's here for you. He's not here tonight. That's fine, Dougie, and don't show up because we don't really need you. But
There's not a whole lot of conversations like this one happening. I mean, there's probably more than we think, but relative to everything else that is going on in the world, it's kind of, I would expect that this is kind of an interesting conversation for other beings. What's going on here?
Beautiful. I never thought about it that way. We're the documentary. I love it. Okay, where are we on time, everybody?
Okay, now there's something. All right, Spirit Collective, here we go. Because I'm all about the intergalactic stuff.
Yes.
Like, I'm just digging that shit. So I'm like, okay, I just had the idea that let's just get a conversation going with these other beings, and let's just bring it. So
Interesting.
Jackie, you could come around if you wanted, because, look, let's make it natural, normal, and even somewhat ordinary that this kind of work is just what we are. We're sitting, I keep saying, Spirit Collective, we get together, we heal each other. That's been great. But let's notch it up a little bit. Let's get okay, we know about ascended masters and angels and spirit guides and beings and the force or the power of love, which isn't a being. It's like, let's somehow, with our guides, let's materialize that for the greater good. Because our group of 5 people here is just way too little. I want something big. It's like, look, if I don't want to deal with the American government or countries in general, I watch countries all over the world, and they're all a shit show, if you really want to know the truth. Some are better than others, but what humans do to each other, it is about time we bring down the powers. Now, don't you guys think? Come on, let's just not, don't hesitate. You can do this. Come on. You guys want to bring down the powers?
I certainly want to approach it with appropriate precaution, just simply because we all know that there are some powerful, powerful beings. So here's what crossed my mind, though. It's like, I don't even know what to call these, but if you guys watch this,
I'm looking at them, by the way, these powerful beings.
Yes. I know. And
I want more. I'm greedy. I'm jealous. I'm greedy. I'm angry. And if I'm going to replace all those things, I want more of the powers coming down.
It's so funny because
hey, Kathleen, can you clarify this? No, I think you just did.
The point is, okay, look, We have to listen to this shit show about these other people. But see, now here's the caveat. We are not going to enter into dualistic fighting. If we're gonna do spirit warrior stuff, it's got to be
universal,
non-combative, non-aggressive.
universal.
That's my one. Yeah, it's got. But like seriously, we talked about the portal. You talked about the portal. Like I love astrophysics. I just love all that stuff. We want, not I, I'm not an identity. We want to bring in, like we're going to make this opening, this massive opening, and it's just going to flow into this dimension and expand. And we're all positive. And I know it's resonating with Annie because she's up way close to the camera now. Jump in, sister, and give your 2 cents. I'm shutting up.
Is it okay if I talk?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's more than okay.
Thank you. I 100% agree that we as spiritual beings can utilize our gifts for the greater good. I have found that when I work towards the greater good and I'm looking towards massive shift, the larger thing, the I want big change thing actually is small. Mm-hmm. It actually becomes gentler. It isn't wildly dramatic. Here's an example, and I'm sorry this is political, but I was watching the debate before this call, and it was very interesting to me how every politician on the debate stage took a much kinder approach to each other. Mm. They were clear. They had their own views. They disagreed, but it wasn't just respectful. They were kind, and they literally crossed into each other's space as if one of them were standing here next to me. They would cross into my space and put their hand on my shoulder and then cross, like a camera in my camera frame. They were doing that for each other. And it was really interesting to me what the mess that is right now has brought out.
The chaos into the form.
The chaos has brought out of, okay, we're not going to behave this way. We're going to be different. I found it to be really powerful, and that is, true for me is that small becomes the big, the greater. Mm-hmm. That when I am working to, I want big, dramatic, oh, holy moly change. Let's open the portal. Let's bring everything in. Let's go, 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 go. It manifests as small. And that's what I wanted to say. The other thing it's just so interesting to me. I'm so incredibly grateful to be invited to this evening just because I've been adrift. Just adrift, not really tuned into my gifts, not utilizing my gifts, just adrift. Yesterday and today I had patients who are struggling so badly with either mental health or physical health or social well-being, all of the above. They're just struggling. And I chose to not just be their physical caregiver, but to very purposefully use gifts that I have and have learned. It makes me embarrassed to say I don't do it every day. It made a difference. It made a difference for these people. It's hard. Other areas of my life are just gone kerflooey. I've just a miserable cold. I spent an hour and a half on the side of a freeway with my car waiting for a tow. That because I had a horrible wretchedly flat tire that was just wrecked, and I thought I'd bent the frame and all kinds of terrible things. My garage door won't open with the opener. I mean, this is all fixable stuff. This is not the big time, okay? You know, this is not having my hips replaced. It's a cold. It's nothing. It's going to go away. It is not coronavirus. But it's, you know, those little nagging things that have been happening. And I still was thinking about, no, bring the bigger stuff in. Bring the better energy. Be our better angels. Bring those things in.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what I was anxious to say.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
How are we doing? Are we at 7 now? I have no idea. I can't tell. I don't want to keep you guys super late because oh, you're muted. Sorry. I would like to be able to do this again. Don't want to wear out my welcome. What is it? What time is it?
In Wisconsin, it's 9:15.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I would like to incorporate a gentle shifting into that heart space. I'm laughing because I'm like, but you two are such good closers, Kathleen and Ofer. Who would be so lovely? Oh, you're muted, Kathleen. Oh, don't tell me, Kathleen, that you are doing it now because you are muted and you always do an amazing job of this.
I said, Ofer, do one of you. I didn't know I was muted. I'm so goofy. Okay. I said, Ofer, I can do the closing, but if Ofer wants to do like a heart space, like just a really quick, just do one of your lovey-dovey.
I'm thinking maybe the next time. I feel like it's.
Can we do this for you, perhaps?
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Well, I'll do the closing.
Oh, goody.
So, first of all, we just want to acknowledge all of our high hearts and our high minds that there was this magic moment that we all gathered together tonight to think about how life has shifted for all of us, and we've expanded through our own healings. And we were surprised to learn that we were healed by other people's suffering and healing. And as we move forward, we think about ourselves more expansively, and we've even propositioned and petitioned the divine that we might be used more distinctively to this end. But we were blessed by pace and size with our dear contributor, Annie, expressing the need to have small things create large things, which is exactly how love works. It's not overwhelming and it's not demanding. And as we roll in 2020, we expand ourselves in a way that creates more and more possibilities. We've decided that we are not local, we are everywhere. And so we can return our point of view into just our singular bodies, or we can feel ourselves out into every dimension, but also going into the inner recesses of our interior only to expand again. It sounds to me like a breathing, evolving universe. And I thank everyone for coming tonight and giving your gifts of love and presence and healing and laughter and permission to just be a little weird, okay? So it is.
And so it is. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you all. We love you. We love you. We love you.
Yeah.
And guess who shows up right at the end?
Yeah, Dougie!
Good night, everybody. I will continue to post monthly because that's what we're committing to, small. So look for our email for this next month, and we will catch up with each other again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Good night.